The Battle of Sol system began when the enemy fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the edge of human territory. Supreme Overlord Vexthon stood on the bridge of his massive flagship, looking at the tactical displays with confusion. His sensors were showing enemy numbers that seemed impossible. "Commander, what is the status of the human fleet?" Vexthon demanded from his second-in-command. "Sir, we are detecting over 40,000 vessels in defensive positions around Earth. Our intelligence report said the humans only had 300 ships," the frightened officer replied. Vexthon's 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the sensor readings. "These cannot all be military vessels. Run a detailed scan." The results made no sense to him. Most of the defending ships were civilian vessels that had been converted for combat. There were mining ships, cargo haulers, fishing boats, and even passenger liners that had been fitted with weapons. It was the most disorganized fleet he had ever seen. "This is perfect," Vexthon said with a cruel laugh. "The humans are so desperate they are using civilian ships. We will destroy them easily." But Captain Steve Brooks aboard the human ship Defiance was working with converted fishing vessels from Tau Ceti, and he knew something the enemy did not. "Jake, these fishing captains have been working together for decades. They know how to coordinate attacks better than any military squadron I have ever seen. The enemy launched their first assault wave with 1,000 heavy cruisers. These were the ships that had conquered dozens of worlds. They moved in perfect formation toward Earth, expecting to crush the human defenses quickly, but something strange happened when they got close to the defending fleet. The mining ships from Kepler began moving in ways that confused the enemy targeting systems. These vessels were designed to work around dangerous asteroids where a single mistake meant death. They could change direction and speed in ways that military ships could not match. When enemy missiles tried to lock onto them, they simply were not there anymore. Captain Tony Nelson was commanding a wing of converted fishing vessels and former enemy defectors when the real fighting started. "The enemy is trying to use their standard attack patterns, but our ships do not fight like a normal military force. We are fighting like a community that has worked together for years." The fishing boats moved in groups like schools of fish. When enemy fighters tried to attack one boat, the others would surround the attacker from all sides. The enemy pilots had never faced anything like coordinated swarm tactics from civilian vessels. Dr. Amy Carter was monitoring the battle from her command post, and she was amazed by what she was seeing. "Jake, the enemy formations are falling apart. They have trained to fight against organized military fleets, but they have no idea how to handle an enemy that fights like this." The converted cargo ships were using their large holding areas to launch unprecedented numbers of small fighters. Ships that had once carried grain and manufactured goods were now launching waves of attack craft that overwhelmed enemy defenses through sheer numbers. Supreme Overlord Vexthon was becoming increasingly frustrated as his battle plans fell apart. "Why are our ships not destroying these primitive vessels?" he screamed at his tactical officer. "Sir, the enemy ships are too small and numerous for our main weapons to target effectively. Our heavy cruisers are designed to fight other heavy cruisers, not swarms of tiny vessels," the officer explained nervously. The turning point came when Vexthon's own flagship found itself surrounded by ships from worlds that had once been enemy slave colonies. These were aliens that Vexthon had personally enslaved decades ago. They had been freed by human rescue missions when no other race would risk the effort. Captain Lisa Wright aboard the Endeavour was coordinating with a group of former slaves who had built their own ships from salvaged parts. "Admiral Sullivan, you need to see this. The former slaves are broadcasting messages to other enemy ships. They are telling the enemy crews about the humans who risked everything to free them." The messages were powerful. Alien voices speaking to their own people about humans who had come to rescue them when they had given up hope. Stories about human soldiers who had died freeing alien children from prison camps. Tales of human families who had adopted alien orphans whose parents had been killed by the enemy. Enemy ships began surrendering one by one. Entire squadrons of enemy vessels switched sides when they heard the stories being broadcast. The crews realized they were fighting against the very people who had shown mercy to their own families and friends. Jake Morrison was commanding his section of the fleet when he received an incredible report. "Sir, enemy ships are surrendering faster than we can accept their surrender. Some enemy captains are asking to join our fleet instead of just giving up." Admiral Kate Sullivan was watching the battle unfold from Earth, and she could hardly believe what she was seeing. The enemy's disciplined military formation had completely collapsed. Ships were surrendering, switching sides, or simply stopping their attacks and floating motionless in space. "This is not just a military victory," she said to Dr. Carter. "This is something completely different. Look at what is happening out there. Hundreds of different species working together, sharing technologies, covering each other's weaknesses. They are not fighting as separate allies. They are fighting as one unified force." The final moment came when Supreme Overlord Vexthan realized that his own ship was surrounded by vessels from every world he had ever conquered. The former slaves he had tormented were looking at him through their ship screens. The scientists he had called traitors were standing alongside the humans he had tried to destroy. With his flagship's weapons disabled and his fleet in ruins, Vexthan opened a communication channel to Admiral Sullivan. His cruel face showed something that had never been there before. Fear. "This is Supreme Fleet Commander Vexthan," he said in a voice that shook with defeat. "The hegemony yields to the human coalition. We surrender unconditionally. We did not understand what we were fighting." The battle was over, but something even more remarkable happened next. The major alliance powers who had watched the entire conflict from safe distances found themselves facing a completely changed galaxy. The old system where big governments decided the fate of small ones was finished. Ambassador Helen Price found herself speaking not just for humanity, but for the new coalition of the willing. When the cowardly alliance representatives tried to return and claim credit for the victory, she had a simple message for them. "You counted ships and saw we were outnumbered," Helen told the gathered alien ambassadors. "You counted weapons and saw we were outgunned. You counted the odds and decided we could not win. But you forgot to count the most important thing of all." She paused and looked at each of the aliens who had abandoned humanity in their darkest hour. "You forgot to count hearts. You forgot to measure the bonds that are created when people treat each other with dignity and respect. You forgot that real strength does not come from fear, but from friendship." Captain Jake Morrison looked out at the mixed fleet of winners floating in space around Earth. There were human ships next to alien vessels of every shape and size. There were former enemies working alongside former slaves. There were refugees fighting next to the people who had given them homes. Jake finally understood what made humanity special in the galaxy. It was not their technology or their tactics, or their weapons. It was something much simpler and much more powerful. When humans said that no one should be left behind, they meant everyone. When they said that everyone deserved to be treated with dignity, they meant it. The galaxy would never be the same again. The age of big powers bullying small ones had ended. In its place rose something new and beautiful. A coalition built not on fear or conquest, but on the simple human idea that everyone mattered. And in the end, that idea proved stronger than the biggest fleet in galactic history. The enemy had brought 10,000 ships to destroy humanity. But humanity had brought something even more powerful. They had brought hope and friendship and the memory of every small kindness they had ever shown. That was enough to change everything. Admiral Kate Sullivan found herself commanding the strangest fleet in the history of space warfare. From her command center on Earth, she could see reports coming in from all over human space. Her human military ships formed the center of the defense, but around them swarmed vessels from over 200 different alien species and independent groups. Captain Dan Murphy aboard the Valiant was working with a group of enemy soldiers who had switched sides. These were not normal defectors. They were aliens who had been guarding human prisoners and had been amazed by what they saw. "Admiral, these enemy soldiers tell me that human prisoners would not break no matter what was done to them. Instead of begging for mercy, the humans kept trying to help other prisoners. It changed how these enemy soldiers thought about the war." Dr. Amy Carter was studying reports from across the fleet and trying to understand the bigger picture. "Kate, do you see what is happening here? This is not just about military help. Every single alien group that has come to help us has a story about humans showing them kindness when no one else would." Jake Morrison was coordinating with a squadron of converted mining ships from the Kepler system. The mining guild had brought their huge industrial vessels and turned them into weapons platforms. Their leader was an alien named Grixtal, who had 4 arms and skin like stone. "Human Jake," Grixtal said in broken human language. 5 years ago, space pirates attack our asteroid mines. We call for help from Alliance, but they say too expensive to send warships. Only humans come. Human ships very small, but human hearts very big. Today we pay debt. The mining ships were not fast or pretty, but they were incredibly tough. They were designed to work in the dangerous environment around asteroids where one mistake could destroy everything. Now they carried weapons that could punch holes through enemy armor. Captain Tony Nelson was commanding a mixed group that included former enemy scientists. These aliens had tried to develop peaceful technology instead of weapons. Their own government had branded them as traitors, but humans had given them sanctuary and helped them continue their research. "The interesting thing, Admiral," Tony reported, "is that these scientists know all the weak points in enemy ship design. They helped build those ships before they switched sides. They are giving us technical data that could turn the whole war around." Even more surprising were the individual volunteers who kept arriving. Chef Rothan had flown his small transport ship from Vega Station to join the fleet. 30 years ago, his family had been dying from a plague that was spreading through their colony. Human doctors had risked their own lives to develop a cure when alien medical companies said it was not profitable enough to bother with. Engineer Yilketh arrived in a small research vessel filled with advanced equipment. His own people had stolen his inventions and refused to give him credit. Human patent officers had made sure his name was properly attached to his work and had helped him get the recognition he deserved. The Refugee Council of the Perseus Arm brought the most emotional story of all. These were aliens whose families had been forced to flee their homeworlds during various wars. When they had arrived at human colonies as refugees, they had expected to be turned away or put in camps. Instead, human families had opened their homes and shared their food. "My grandmother still has the blanket that a human family gave her when she was cold and scared," said council leader Vexani. "I learned to read using books that human children shared with me. How could I not come when the people who raised me needed help?" Captain Steve Brooks of the Defiance was working with converted fishing vessels from Tau Ceti. The fishermen had been struggling to make a living when big corporations had tried to take over their traditional fishing grounds. Human trade negotiators had fought to protect the rights of small independent fishermen against the big companies. "These fishing boats are not warships," Steve reported to Admiral Sullivan. "But there are thousands of them, and they know how to work together like a school of fish. The enemy has never faced anything like coordinated swarm attacks." The pattern was the same everywhere Admiral Sullivan looked. Humans had never set out to build a secret alliance. They had just done what seemed right at the time. When they saw someone being bullied, they stood up for them. When they saw someone in need, they tried to help. When they saw injustice, they tried to fix it. Dr. Carter was analyzing the enemy communications that their computers had intercepted. "Kate, the enemy leader Vexthan is starting to panic. His scouts are reporting fleet numbers that he thinks must be wrong. He expected to fight maybe 300 human ships. Instead, he is seeing reports of over 50,000 allied vessels." "What kind of ships are they?" Admiral Sullivan asked. "That is the problem for the enemy," Dr. Carter said. "They are not standard military vessels, so the enemy does not know how to fight them. Mining ships that can drill through armor, fishing boats that move in perfect coordination, cargo vessels that can launch fighters from their holds, transport ships converted into missile platforms." Captain Lisa Wright aboard the Endeavour was witnessing something that military historians would study for centuries. "Admiral, the enemy formations are designed to fight against organized military fleets. They do not know how to handle an enemy that fights like a community instead of an army." The major alien powers were watching the buildup from safe distances. Their spy ships recorded everything, but they did not join the fight. They had chosen safety over loyalty, and now they were learning what that choice really meant. Ambassador Helen Price was back on Earth trying to coordinate with all the different groups that wanted to help. "Kate, I have aliens offering help that I have never even heard of. There are species that live in gas giant atmospheres who want to provide reconnaissance. There are energy beings who can interfere with enemy communications. There are machine intelligences that can hack enemy computer systems. How do we even organize all of this?" Admiral Sullivan asked. That is the beautiful part, Helen said, with a smile. We do not have to organize them. They are organizing themselves. Every group knows what they are good at, and they are working together naturally. It is like they have been practicing for this moment, their whole lives. Jake Morrison received a priority message from Earth. Jake, the enemy main fleet is approaching our outer defenses. Vexthon is broadcasting demands for immediate surrender. He says he will spare civilian populations if all military forces lay down their arms. Jake looked around at his mixed squadron of human warships, mining vessels, fishing boats, and converted cargo ships. His crew was working alongside aliens he had met just days ago but who felt like old friends. Admiral, what are your orders? Admiral Sullivan appeared on screens throughout the human fleet. Her voice was calm and confident. All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan. The enemy thinks they can scare us into surrendering. They think that because we are outnumbered we will give up. But they have made one big mistake. She paused and looked directly at the camera. They forgot that we are not alone. They forgot about every friendship we have made and every hand we have extended in help. They forgot that when you treat people with respect and kindness, they remember it. Today we show them what real strength looks like. The combined fleet began moving into battle formation. It was not a pretty formation like the ones taught in military schools, but it was effective. Each group knew their role, and they trusted each other to do their jobs. Vexthon was about to learn that there are some things more powerful than fear. Captain Nicole Adams was watching her screens on the ship called Sentinel when something strange started happening. Her ship was flying toward Earth with the other human vessels when her sensor officer called out with surprise. Captain, I am picking up a lot of small ships coming toward us. They are not broadcasting any alliance codes. I do not recognize their ship designs, the young officer said. His name was Alex Turner, and he had only been working on ships for 2 years. Nicole looked at her main screen and saw dozens of small vessels approaching. They were not the sleek warships of the major alien races. These ships looked like they had been built from spare parts. Some were old cargo ships with weapons stuck on the sides. Others looked like mining vessels that had been turned into fighters. This is strange, Nicole said. Open a communication channel. The face that appeared on the screen was not like any alien Nicole had seen before. The creature had rough gray skin and 4 eyes. It wore simple work clothes instead of a military uniform. Human ships, this is Captain Zara of the Outer Rim Collective. We heard that your friends left you alone to fight the big enemy. We want to help you fight. Nicole was confused. She had never heard of the Outer Rim Collective. Who are you exactly, Captain Zara? We are the people that the big alien governments forgot about, Zara said with a smile that showed sharp teeth. We live in the empty spaces between the major star systems. We mine asteroids and fix broken ships and grow food on planets that nobody else wants. But we remember what humans did for us. More small ships kept arriving. Nicole's communication officer was getting calls from dozens of different captains. There were aliens she had never seen before speaking languages she did not understand. But they all had the same message. They wanted to help humanity fight. Jake Morrison was getting similar reports from other human ships. Captain Pete Jackson on the Guardian was surrounded by a group of independent traders and smugglers. Jake, these are not official military ships, Pete reported. These are just regular working people who heard about our situation and came to help. Dr. Amy Carter was trying to understand what was happening. She was studying the database of alien species and finding information about groups she had never paid attention to before. These are all minor species, Jake. Races that never had big governments or powerful armies. Most of them live in small colonies on the edge of known space. Captain Laura Martinez, commanding the Crusader, was getting the most surprising visitors of all. Jake, you are not going to believe this. I have ships full of former slaves approaching my position. These are aliens that were freed from enemy prison planets years ago. An old alien appeared on Laura's screen. Half of his face was made of metal parts where the enemy had hurt him badly. His name was something that sounded like Korthval. 40 years ago, human soldiers came to the prison planet where I was dying. They fought the enemy guards and took us to safety. The big alien government said it was too dangerous to save us. But humans came anyway. Today we pay back that debt. The pattern was becoming clear across human space. While the powerful alien races ran away to safety, the forgotten ones were coming to help. Every species that humanity had helped in small ways over the years was answering the call. They were not bringing huge warships or advanced technology, but they were bringing something else. They were bringing loyalty. Jake received a report from Captain Dan Murphy on the ship called Valiant. "Jake, I have a group of enemy soldiers here who want to join us. They say they were inspired by human prisoners who would not break under torture. These enemy soldiers saw that humans would rather die than betray their friends. It changed their minds about the war." Dr. Carter was amazed as more reports came in. "Jake, do you understand what is happening? Every small act of kindness that humans have done over the years is coming back to help us. Every time we helped someone that the major powers ignored. Every time we stood up for the weak. All of it mattered." The mining guild from the Kepler system arrived with their big industrial ships. Humans had defended their asteroid operations from space pirates 5 years ago, when no one else would help. The guild leaders had never forgotten that debt. Now they were bringing their mining equipment turned into weapons platforms. A group, called the Refugee Council, showed up with fast attack ships built from old transport vessels. These were aliens whose families had fled from war zones. Human colonies had taken them in and given them new homes when their own governments had abandoned them. Now their children were old enough to fly ships, and they wanted to fight for the people who had saved their parents. Former enemy scientists came in small research vessels. These were aliens who had tried to make peace instead of war. Their own people had called them traitors, but humans had protected them and helped them continue their work. They brought technical knowledge about enemy ship weaknesses. Individual aliens kept arriving in single fighters or small cargo ships. There was Chef Rothan from Vega Station, whose family humans had saved from a deadly disease. There was Engineer Yilkith, whose inventions had been stolen by his own people until humans gave him proper credit for his work. Each story was small by itself. A human doctor helping an alien child. A human trader giving fair prices when others cheated. A human soldier protecting civilians that his own commanders said were not worth saving. But when you added all the stories together, they became something bigger. Jake was getting reports from all over human space. The enemy leader Vexthan had expected to face a few hundred human ships. Instead, his sensors were showing a fleet that numbered in the tens of thousands. They were not advanced warships, but there were so many of them that they filled entire star systems. "Sir," said Tom Baker from his weapons station, "the major alien powers are watching this from a distance. Their spy ships are recording everything, but they are not getting involved." Jake nodded. The big alien governments had made their choice. They thought they were being smart by staying safe. But they were also learning something about what real strength looked like. It was not about having the biggest guns or the most advanced technology. Admiral Kate Sullivan called Jake from Earth. Her tired face now showed something Jake had not seen before. Hope. "Jake, what you are seeing out there is happening everywhere. Aliens I have never heard of are arriving at Earth asking how they can help. Our defense coordinators do not even know how to organize them all." Jake looked at his screen showing the mixed fleet of allies surrounding his ship. There were mining ships next to fishing boats next to converted passenger liners. There were former slaves flying next to former enemies. There were refugees fighting alongside the people who had given them homes. "Admiral," Jake said, "I think the enemy made a big mistake. They thought they understood humans. They thought we were just another race that could be bullied and scared. But they forgot about all the connections we have made over the years." Jake thought about his grandfather again. The old soldier had told him that sometimes the most important battles are not won by the biggest armies. Sometimes they are won by people who fight for each other instead of just fighting for themselves. The enemy was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and looked at the big screen in front of him. The screen showed space filled with enemy ships. There were so many ships that they blocked out the stars. Jake had been a ship captain for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The enemy fleet was huge and scary. "Sir, we are getting a message from Admiral Kate Sullivan," said Lisa Chang from her seat at the communication station. Lisa had worked with Jake for 5 years and she was very good at her job. She pressed some buttons and the Admiral's face appeared on the screen. Admiral Sullivan looked tired and worried. Her gray hair was messy and there were dark circles under her eyes. She had been working day and night to prepare for this war.
Jake, I will not lie to you. The enemy has 10,000 ships and we have only 200.
They have been building this big army for many years while we were busy exploring space and making friends with other planets. Jake felt his stomach drop. 10,000 ships against 200 was not good odds. He looked around at his crew and saw the same worry on their faces, but they were all still at their stations doing their jobs. That was what he liked about humans. They did not give up even when things looked bad. "What about our friends in the Alliance?" asked Captain Ben Rodriguez over the communication system. Ben commanded another human ship called the Liberty. "The blue people from Altair and the plant people from Vega said they would help us if we ever needed it." Admiral Sullivan's face became even more worried. "That is the big problem, Ben. Our spies tell us that all our alien friends are already talking to the enemy. They want to make deals to save themselves. They think we cannot win this war." Jake knew about the enemy leader. His name was Vexthon, and he was very cruel. Vexthon had been conquering planets for 50 years. He had turned many worlds into slave camps where aliens worked until they died. The enemy called themselves the Hegemony, and they believed that only the strong should rule the galaxy. Dr. Amy Carter was also on the communication call. She was the smartest human when it came to studying aliens. She had spent 10 years learning about different alien races. "Vexthon hates humans more than any other race," she said. "He thinks we are weak because we help others instead of taking what we want. He wants to destroy every human in the galaxy." Jake looked at the enemy ships again. They were black and shaped like knives. Each ship had enough weapons to destroy a small moon. The enemy had been planning this attack for a very long time. They had built their ships in secret places far from human space. "Sir, the enemy is moving," said his weapons officer, Tom Baker. Tom was young, but he was very brave. He had joined Jake's crew 2 years ago, and he was always ready for a fight. "They are spreading out across 3 star systems. It looks like they want to attack all of our colonies at the same time." Jake nodded. That was what he would do if he was the enemy. Attack everywhere at once so the humans could not help each other. The human colonies were spread across 50 star systems. Each colony had maybe 1 or 2 defense ships. They would not be able to stop the enemy attacks. "Admiral, what are your orders?" Jake asked. He was ready to fight even if they could not win. That was the human way. They would rather die fighting than live as slaves. "All human ships are to fall back to the Sol system," Admiral Sullivan said. "We will make our last stand around Earth. Maybe we can hold them off long enough for some of our people to escape to other galaxies." Jake did not like the idea of running away, but he understood. If they spread their ships out, the enemy would destroy them one by one. At least if they stayed together, they could fight as a team. Maybe they could take some enemy ships with them when they died. The communication ended, and Jake was alone with his crew. He looked at each of them. There was Lisa at communications, Tom at weapons, and 15 other people who had families back on Earth. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders. "Well, you heard the Admiral," Jake said. "We are going home to Earth. But we are not going there to die. We are going there to show the galaxy what humans are made of. The enemy thinks we are weak, but they are wrong. We may be outnumbered, but we are not beaten." His crew nodded and went back to work. They started preparing the ship for the long journey back to human space. Jake watched them work and felt proud. These people were brave and loyal. They would fight until the end. As his ship turned toward Earth, Jake thought about all the alien races that were abandoning humanity. The blue people from Altair had been human friends for 20 years. Humans had helped them fight off space pirates many times. The plant people from Vega had called humans their brothers. Human scientists had helped cure a disease that was killing their children. But now when humans needed help, all of their friends were running away. They were scared of the enemy and they thought humans would lose. Maybe they were right. Maybe humans could not win this war. But Jake knew that humans would not go quietly into the dark. The enemy thought they knew everything about humans. They thought humans were just another weak race that would surrender when faced with a big army. But the enemy did not understand. What made humans special? It was not their weapons or their ships, it was something else. Something that even Jake did not fully understand yet. As the stars moved past his ship, Jake wondered if there was anyone left in the galaxy who still believed in humanity. The big alien governments had already given up on them. But maybe somewhere in the dark spaces between the stars there were others who remembered what humans had done for them. Maybe the enemy had made a mistake. Maybe they had forgotten about all the small acts of kindness that humans had shown over the years. Time would tell. The meeting room was filled with aliens from all over the galaxy. Jake Morrison watched the big screen from his ship as the Galactic Alliance Council held their emergency meeting. This was supposed to be where all the different alien races would decide to help humanity fight the enemy. But Jake could see from their faces that things were not going well. Ambassador Helen Price sat at the human table in the meeting room. She had been humanity's voice to the galaxy for 10 years. Helen was smart and brave, and she had made many friends among the alien races. But today, even her friends would not look at her. "We have stood with all of you when you needed help," Helen said to the room full of aliens. "When the crystal bugs attacked the blue people on Altair Prime, human ships came to fight. Many of our people died protecting your colonies. When space pirates attacked the plant people's trade ships, we cleared them out. We did not ask for anything in return." The blue alien from Altair stood up. His name was something that humans could not say, so everyone called him Ambassador Blue. His face had no expression as he spoke. "Yes, the humans have been brave friends. But being brave is not enough when you face an enemy this big. We will not destroy our own worlds just to help humanity die slowly." Jake felt angry as he watched this. The blue people had called humans their closest friends just last year. Now they were walking away when humans needed them most. But Jake understood why they were scared. The enemy fleet was bigger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Ryan Foster was commanding another human ship called the Horizon. He sent Jake a private message. "All the alien fleets are leaving. I am watching them jump to hyperspace right now. Even the rock people from Centauri are taking their ships home." Dr. Amy Carter was studying the enemy messages that her computers had captured. "Jake, you need to hear this. The enemy leader Vexthon is sending messages to all the alien races. He is telling them they can live if they stop helping humans within 3 days. The message was clear and simple: help humanity and die. Leave humanity alone and live. It was an easy choice for most aliens. They had their own families and worlds to think about. Why should they all die for one race? Jake watched as one alien race after another stood up in the meeting and said they were leaving the Alliance. On the sea, green people from Tau Ceti said they needed to protect their own colonies. The bird people from Ross said they could not risk their flying cities. The fish people from Proxima said their underwater worlds were more important than fighting. Helen Price tried to change their minds. She reminded them of all the times humans had helped them. She talked about the trade agreements that made them rich. She spoke about the science that humans had shared freely. But it did not matter. Fear was stronger than friendship. By the end of the day, every major alien race had voted to leave the Alliance. They were taking their ships and going home. The galaxy's biggest and strongest armies were abandoning humanity to face the enemy alone. Some aliens said they were sorry as they left. Others just walked away without saying anything. Admiral Kate Sullivan called Jake after the meeting ended. Her face looked older than it had that morning. "Jake, we are completely alone now. Every alien fleet is jumping out of our space. We have gotten reports that even the space stations are closing their doors to human ships." Captain Nicole Adams was commanding a ship called the Sentinel near the edge of human space. She reported that alien traders were refusing to sell supplies to human colonies. Alien doctors were leaving human hospitals. Even alien students were being called home from human schools. "They are treating us like we already lost the war," Nicole said over the communication system. "Some aliens are even taking down pictures of human friends from their walls. They want to pretend they never knew us." Jake looked at his crew working on the bridge. They were all human, and they were all brave. But they were also all that was left. In 3 days, every human ship would be facing the biggest enemy fleet in galactic history with no help from anyone. "Sir, the enemy is broadcasting something," said Lisa Chang from her communication station. She put the message on the main screen. The face that appeared was ugly and cruel. It was Vexathon, the enemy leader. "Humans of Earth," Vexathon said in a voice like broken glass. "Your friends have abandoned you. Your allies have run away. You are alone in the dark and we are coming for you. Surrender now and some of you may live as slaves. Fight us and we will burn every human world until nothing is left." The message ended and the bridge was quiet. Jake looked around at his crew. Tom Baker at weapons was cleaning his hands nervously. Lisa Chang was checking her communication equipment, over and over. The other crew members were trying to look busy, but Jake could see the fear in their eyes. "Well," Jake said finally, "I guess that settles it. We know where we stand." He walked to the center of the bridge and looked at each of his crew members. "The enemy thinks they have already won. Our alien friends think we are going to lose. Maybe they are right. Maybe we cannot beat an army 10,000 ships strong." He paused and looked out at the stars. "But I know something about humans that the enemy does not know. We do not just fight for ourselves. We fight for what is right. We fight for people who cannot fight for themselves. And we never give up even when everyone else has given up on us." Tom Baker looked up from his weapons station. "What are your orders, Captain?" Jake smiled for the first time in days. "We are going to Earth, Tom. We are going to gather every human ship we can find. Then we are going to show this Vexthan what happens when you threaten human families." The crew started working with new energy. They began preparing the ship for the journey to Earth. Jake watched them and felt something he had not expected. Hope. Not hope that they would win the war. The numbers made that almost impossible. But hope that they would fight well and make humanity proud. As his ship turned toward Earth, Jake thought about something his grandfather had told him. His grandfather had been a soldier in an old Earth war. He had said that sometimes you fight not because you think you can win, but because fighting is the right thing to do. Sometimes you fight because someone has to stand up to bullies even when everyone else is too scared. The enemy had made one mistake. They thought that abandoning humanity would make humans weak and scared, but Jake was starting to think it might do the opposite. When you have nothing left to lose, you can fight, without holding back. When no one expects you to win, you can surprise them. Maybe there were still some surprises left in this war.